Hi everyone. So we'll start off in another 10 minutes at max, and just keep yourselves on mute and keep your mics off.
Guys, please unmute yourself. Mute yourself.
Puneet Nigam, can you please mute your mic?
Puneet Nigam, please mute yourself. And everybody else, please keep your mics on mute
क्या चीज?
and cameras off. You guys can use the chat box for any sort of doubts or anything else. And we'll start off in another 2 minutes. So just many students are still joining and just hold on for that much. All right, everyone. So we'll start off now. And since the meeting is already full, please make sure all your friends are joining us via the
All right,
live stream.
everyone. So we'll start off now.
Yeah. So, hi everyone, and yeah, we'll start off now. And welcome, ma'am. Thank you for being part of our event today. And I hope you guys can learn a lot from today's experience. And I'll hand over to ma'am right now. Please make sure that your mics are on mute and you're constantly asking your doubts only on the chat box. Please don't disturb in the middle of the session. We'll have a Q&A session at the end as well.
Thanks a lot, Sejal, and thanks for your setting the ground rules here. So I'll be taking all the questions towards the end because there's a possibility a question might be answered since as I'm going forward. So we'll have time towards the end for Q&A, and I think without wasting a lot of time, I'll just start off. I'll share my screen. Can someone confirm if you're able to see my screen? Sejal, if you can just give me a heads up.
Yeah, your screen is
Okay.
visible.
Okay, perfect. So let's start off with this session. And today I'm going to give you an overview of Google Cloud Platform, or GCP as it is popularly called. And I'm going to run you through the fundamentals, give you a demo of the actual platform so you know what cloud is all about, and dive a little bit into the courses you can do to gain more knowledge and some of the certifications which you can pursue if you want to explore this more. So I'm Vijeta, and I'm a Google developer expert for Google Cloud. And currently, I'm residing in the US, but I'm working on my own website, Cloud Demystified. So, without wasting much time about myself, I'll just start off with the fundamentals. Now, what is cloud computing in the first place? All of you might have heard about cloud computing either from your peers or people all around you, and it's a buzzword right now, especially during the pandemic. What is cloud computing? Every organization, or even an individual for that matter, has a lot of data when they are trying to run their applications. For example, even if you're a startup or you're a big organization, you collect a lot of data. That data can be your internal customer data or your external customer data or data of your employees. Data is everywhere. Even while we are talking here and I'm presenting the session, YouTube, Google Meet, everyone, they're collecting data. So what do we do with so much of data? There needs to be a really good or comprehensive way of not only storing the data, but also managing it. There are ways that companies do that. Some companies have an on-premise data center. What is a data center? Data center consists of different servers, racks, and all the physical infrastructure in which they store their data. And companies, whether they're small or big, after a certain scale, they have to store their data in that data center. And sometimes it gets very overwhelming for these companies. I'll just give you an example. ShareChat recently has migrated onto Google Cloud. It is open news. So before the pandemic, ShareChat was growing really well. But the pandemic actually accelerated their growth like anything, which is a good thing, right? They had more and more customers getting onboarded. They had a lot of downloads and, of course, a lot of data. It is very simple to maybe have a physical data center and store all the data out there, but sometimes it gets very, very difficult to maintain. Just giving you an example, you have to manage not only the physical hardware, you have to also manage any kind of incidents that you get. Sometimes the incidents can be something as simple as someone unplugging the data, one of the servers from the rack. So there can be numerous issues, there can be numerous problems that you encounter when you have a physical data center. You need to also have a dedicated team to look after it. And also, if there's any problem, if there is anything, any disruption, the entire team would be on their feet, and it's a lot of headache for them. So having a physical data center, although it's convenient, it is extremely difficult for these companies and also very cost exhaustive as well. Just imagine, you not only need to have physical servers, racks, and all that, those hardware, you have to maintain them. You have to make sure that there's a team dedicated to it 24/7 that monitor the security, monitor the performance. It's a big headache. Cloud computing makes our life easier in this situation. What is a cloud? Cloud computing is a shared environment that is given by certain providers like Google, Amazon, or Microsoft, Oracle. These are the popular ones in the market right now. It's an environment which is given to organizations and individuals depending upon the usage, where servers, networks, storage, development tools, and applications are centrally hosted. What do I mean by this? So since you have a lot of data and applications running for any kind of organization, small or big, cloud providers give them an environment where they can have their own virtual machines, their own infrastructure, and applications as well, everything in one platform. So they don't need to go into a physical data center to make sure that everything is working fine. They buy servers, racks, they just rent out space as and when needed. That's why I'm using the term shared environment. So they just rent out different virtual machines or a virtual private cloud that is a space inside the cloud where they can host their applications. They just need to go in and write their code sometimes if they're a developer, or if it's a bigger company, they can rent a VM or a virtual machine and run their applications on that. Probably all of you are still working on the cloud. Why do I say that? You might be using Google Drive, OneDrive, or any other service. And Google has the Google Workplace, or even the Google Drive for that matter, where you just go and save your files, right? You don't have to worry about going saving those files on your computer or your laptop, and you can save them on the drive. What does that do? That saves you a lot of effort. You don't have to worry about the security aspects of it. You don't have to worry about transferring those files. If you change your laptop, or if your laptop crashes, what will happen? All the data will get deleted. So you don't have to worry about that because cloud has all your data secure. So this is just a very simple example of cloud, but we'll just do a deep dive now. What are the types of cloud providers in the market? You might be hearing a lot about public, private, hybrid. What does it mean? So the first kind of cloud provider we are going to talk about is a public cloud provider. Since many of you are just beginners or just starting out, I'll give a very simple example that you all can relate to. Let's not go into the tech world. Let's deal with real life examples. So many of you might have friends, or even some of you might be staying in a PG or a hostel while doing your college, while you're in college. When you are in a PG, sometimes you have a room where 3 people are sharing one room, right? In a hostel or a PG. So that is an example of how the public cloud provider works. You have one space, organization. In this case, for example, you may have 2 more roommates. However, you do have your own personal space. You have a bed, a cabinet, or something else that is completely your personal space. No one can encroach into that, hopefully. But that is how it works. So it's one space that is shared by different cloud providers, and they have their own boundaries or their own virtual space in which they can run their applications, save their data, or even write a code. Next, we have the private cloud providers. There are some banks or certain institutes that are very concerned about their safety. In that case, they use a private cloud provider. What is a private cloud provider? Let's say you lived in a hostel or a PG for a year. Suddenly you realize, okay, this is getting really difficult for me because I'm not having my own privacy. If my parents visit, they cannot stay with me, and I have a lot of money. What do? You rent out a 1-bedroom house. A 1 BHK or a 1-bedroom house can be extremely expensive, but at the same time, you have your own space. And there also, you don't have to worry about many things. Like even if your roof is leaking, you just call up the landlord or the owner of the house, and they fix it for you. So you don't have to worry about any of the infrastructure or any of the other headaches, but at the same time, you have your own space. However, this is extremely expensive as compared to a PG or a hostel. Some of the startups, for example, don't have that kind of budget to afford a private cloud provider. What do they do then? They choose a hybrid, which is called a hybrid cloud provider. What is a hybrid cloud provider? I'll give you another example. You decided 1 year at a 1 BHK was extremely expensive for you. You're not able to manage that much. It's going way beyond your expenses. What do? You decide to go back to the PG, but you talk to the PG landlord or the owner and tell them, can I get a single room for myself? I don't want to live with 2 or 3 other roommates, but can I get a single room in the PG? It's a win-win situation. You have your own privacy, you have your own room. At the same time, it's not burning a hole in your pocket, or it's not getting really expensive. That is the entire concept on which hybrid cloud providers work. Once we have the groundwork here, I'll just explain this technically. What is a public cloud provider? Public cloud provider is a space that is shared between organizations. So it's a common cloud or a virtual space in which different organizations have their own virtual private cloud, or they have their own VMs or different services where they run their applications. There is bifurcation. It doesn't mean that if you're sharing a space with, for example, a bank, you can just go and use their data. No, there's a lot of security and a lot of measures to make sure that your data is secure. Next, we have a private cloud provider. What is a private cloud provider? This space is exclusive for one organization. So maybe a particular space is rented out to one organization, and they don't really have to worry about sharing that space with anyone else. That is how a private cloud provider works. Hybrid, like I said, uses both the public and the private cloud. So they use features of the private and the public cloud to provide a good experience, which is not only cost effective, but at the same time, it also has really good privacy and security features, which some companies might be worried about. Google Cloud is a public cloud provider, but right now they're also moving towards a really hybrid model. So they're trying to negotiate between the two. This kind of flexibility makes it very easy for companies to think about moving to the cloud. And that's the reason why cloud is getting extremely popular. Now, I've been talking about different cloud providers and data centers. I'm going to explain one concept to you: regions and zones. What is a region? So, region is basically a geographical location. So, it's basically a location where your data center is situated. Think about this. You all are using Facebook. You want really fast experience, right? With that, you don't want any kind of latency. What do I mean by latency? Slow. You don't want it to be slow. You want it to be fast. You want it to be at your fingertips. Or you're watching a game, for example. You're watching IPL right now and you want everything to be really fast because you don't want your friend to know who won before you, right? It's a thriller and it's a really good match that's going on. In that, you have to make sure that the data center is closest to your target audience. So there's not a lot of delay in the traffic that is going to your audience. That is where a region comes into play. Region is a geographical location where cloud providers have their physical data centers. So you can choose a region that is closest to your target audience. It is so much simpler than having a data center, right? Where you have to move all the racks and servers to a location that is closest to your target audience. Here, it's just a click of a button and you can choose which region you want. So basically, region is a geographical location where all your data is hosted, and preferably it always needs to be closer to your target audience. What is a zone? Zone is an area within a region. For example, in the example that you have out here, US West 2, just look at the US map I have there. It is called a region. So it is basically the entire geographical location where you have the data center. However, Europe West B or Asia South A are zones, that is sub areas within a region. So sometimes when you have a very specific target audience or a very specific requirement, you can narrow it down. For example, Asia South 1A is actually Mumbai, which you know in simple language, and Europe West 2B is Paris. So similarly, I mean, instead of having an entire country or an entire continent as a region, you can also narrow down to certain cities if you know, okay, this is my target audience. There's a specific election event, for example, happening in Mumbai. So I want to have it in that particular zone. So that is how regions and zones are described. This is very important when you're understanding cloud computing, because you need to make sure that all your applications or anything that you're running is in a good region and a zone. So basically, sometimes you're okay with regions, sometimes you have to narrow down to zones. So it's good to have this knowledge, and you'll be encountering this term again and again. So now, I'm going to give you a preview of Google Cloud Platform, because we are talking about cloud again and again. So you might be wondering, how does a cloud actually look like? So what I'll do is I'll just share. So I'm going to expand this, as some of you might be on your mobile devices. This is how a Google Cloud Platform looks like. Very easy, right? It's just like any other website that you all are accessing. You don't have a physical data center where there's so many wires, racks, servers, electricity consumption. This is just like any other website. So this is how a Google Cloud Platform looks like. In this, you have a lot of metrics, like you can see quick access, what all you have done. You have different APIs, and also billing. Billing is a very important part of this. So you want to make sure that you are not exceeding the limit, right? You want to make sure that you're getting billed properly and you are using the resources optimally. So that is where the billing comes into play. Next, we have monitoring. What is monitoring? So if you want to just monitor some of your applications, the amount of data that's coming in, is it getting slow? Is it reaching the right people? Monitoring and alerting can help. What is alerting? In case something goes unexpected, you can have different conditions out there. For example, if the application is getting so slow that it is taking more than 5 minutes to load or something like that, you can have an alert. So no matter where you are, you get an alert that you have to quickly go and look into the application to make sure everything's running fine. Next, we have different error reporting. So if you want to report any errors, you have news, of course, to stay up to date, and you have different getting started guides out here. So there's a lot in the Google Cloud Platform, and you can see the navigation menu on the left-hand side. Those are 3 bars. Once you click on the navigation menu, you have all the services that you require, whether it is security, whether it is compute. What do I mean by compute? I'll come to it in some time. Those are the services that Google Cloud uses. You have storage services. For example, you want to store a lot of files or a lot of data or a lot or any of the some of the data that you have at rest, as in the data is not in transit right now, you can store it in the storage options. They have Google Cloud has a lot of storage options as well. Then you have databases, so big table, data store. These are all the different databases that you have. So you even have SQL for that matter. Also, then you have networking. So what is VPC? VPC is an important term. It is called virtual private cloud. So you have different networking security, and next you have operations. I just talked a little bit about monitoring and debugging, right? So monitoring, debugging, logging, trace, error reporting, all of it, and different tools that you can use. And finally, we have the big data. So what is big data? Is basically if you want to analyze all the data sets that you have or all the data that you have out here. And then you have AI. That's artificial intelligence. So there's a lot of AI work going on in Google Cloud, and you can use that to create a chatbot or any other AI functionality. So this is basically the AI platform. And finally, there's some partner solutions. If you want to access more, like MongoDB, some of you might have heard about that, Splunk Cloud. So these are some of the partner solutions or some of the organizations that are partnered with Google Cloud to give you an optimal experience. If you want to see your project details, for example, you see here right next to the Google Cloud Platform, My First Project. You can see all the project details out here. So what all projects do you have? I just have one here, so I can choose this particular project. And also you can search for products and resources if you want. So this is how your Google Cloud Platform looks like. You can always customize it, your dashboard, any way you want to. So if you want, okay, I don't really care about billing, let me just put it down to the bottom. You can also do that. So as you can see, this is an easily customizable one-stop shop to handle all your applications on your data. Compare this to a physical data center where you have so many machines, racks, servers, so many wires and people to take care of. So this is what a cloud platform looks like. Now, what are the advantages of moving to the cloud? Some of the advantages I have already mentioned to you, but some you might be still curious. Why do we need to move to the cloud in the first place? Or why do organizations need to move to the cloud? First one is data processing and analytics. Like I showed you in the Google Cloud Platform, remember, even if you have a lot of data, there are really good data processing and analytic abilities that Google Cloud Provider gives you. What does that mean? It means no matter how much data you have, you can always run different analytics to see what is the trend, how things are going, if there's any improvement that needs to take place, and also monitor your applications using this. So you know that your applications are safe, which is not really a very good solution when you have a physical data center, right? You have so much data, you have so many machines, you don't know how to collect all of it together. But cloud gives you really good data processing and analytic capabilities. Next, agility. What is agility? Agility comes from the word agile, which means fast. So Google Cloud Platform is extremely fast, as in it gives a really good experience for your end users. So when you're using an application, for example, let me go back to ShareChat. They have an application that you're using on your mobile. You just download it from Google Store. And after that, it is extremely fast. You don't have to worry about speed dropping because Google Cloud is going to take care of that. So if you need agility and a really good way to grow, cloud is an extremely good option. Why? How does it actually ensure agility? I just talked about regions and zones a while ago, right? So because there's so many data centers around the world for Google Cloud, it's very easy to see who your target audience are and how Google Cloud can have a data center closer to your target audience. That makes it extremely fast. So even if you're sitting in India, you can have a data center in the US and make sure that your US customers are getting an optimal experience. Agility is another, yeah, like I said, it's a good feature provided by cloud providers, especially Google Cloud. Next, you have scalability. What is scalability? Pay attention to these terms because when you're studying more and more about Google Cloud, you will encounter these terms. Scalability means the ability to go from 0 to 100 customers, or even a million for that matter, or million back to 10 in a very, very smooth manner. Sometimes you don't know the amount of load you get. For example, you're accessing a website when there's no sport event going on, you might not have too many customers. It's just people who are watching the recap or the highlights of previous matches. Suddenly you have the IPL, you have the Olympics, you have the T20 matches. What happens at that time? A lot of people log in. So Hotstar, for example, it might be getting so many requests right now at this moment. So whenever that happens, you need to make sure that you have a solution that is scalable, that is, it's able to move up and down based on the load. So even if there are 1,000 people who have joined the stream, or let me talk about millions here, the million people who have joined the stream, they want to make sure that the performance is good for them. And at the same time, even if there are very few people who have joined, for example, just 10 or 12 or just watching highlights, they still want to make sure that the performance is good without burning a hole in your pocket. So that is what scalability is all around, the ability to move up and down based on load. Next, we have lower infrastructure maintenance. This is something I've been mentioning again and again. So because you don't have a physical data center, there's not a lot of headache to maintain that particular infrastructure, as in the machines, the racks and servers. You just, like you saw, you just need to go on a website and you can run all your applications, you can run virtual machines, you can do whatever you want to from that website only. So there's no hardware maintenance out there. And next, you have lower costs. So because it is so much cost effective, you don't have an entire team handling the infrastructure. Cost is a very important aspect of Google Cloud. Now, what also Google Cloud gives really good committed and sustained use discounts. What do I mean by that? So if a company knows that we are going to work with Google Cloud for the next XYZ number of months or years, they can have a sustained or a committed use contract based on which they get really good discounts. So because of the flexible pricing model, Google Cloud is an excellent option for organizations. Next, what are some of the cloud services? Like I showed you the cloud, and what services do cloud providers offer? First is infrastructure as a service, or something we popularly call as IaaS. Next, we have platform as a service, or PaaS. And next, we have software as a service, or SaaS. What is infrastructure as a service? So basically, infrastructure as a service is a particular cloud provider service where hardware is provided to you for your usage. Let me just go back to the house example, because it's always easy when you can relate all of this to your day-to-day lives. So, for example, you want to rent out a house. You're given an entire space. So basically you go and it's a completely unfurnished house. You're just given a space. You have to buy your own light. You have to buy your own fan. You have to buy your own furniture, your bed, your sofa. That is the concept behind infrastructure as a service. The infrastructure, or the virtual private network, VPN, for example, is provided to you, and everything else is so customizable. You can buy any kind of, for example, lights, fans, or bed when it comes to a house. And when it comes to Google Cloud or a cloud provider, you can customize it the way you want to. I'll just show this in an example in some time, so just keep that in mind. Next, we have platform as a service. What is platform as a service? So in this, think about this like a semi-furnished house. You are given a house and you're given light, fan, and all the basic amenities, but you have to buy your own furniture, you have to buy your own bed, your own sofa, and everything else you have to buy on your own. That is platform as a service, where the hardware and the operating system is provided to you by Google Cloud. So this is how platform as a service works. Platform as a service is somewhere in between highly customizable and highly manageable. It gives you a good amount of flexibility because you still manage a big part of it, but at the same time, you don't have to really worry about the operating system, patching the operating system, or keeping it upgraded, worrying about its security and everything. So it is somewhere in between infrastructure and software as a service. Next, we have software as a service, which provides you the hardware and the software for your use. Google Drive, for example, is software as a service. You don't have to worry about anything. You just have to go and drop your applications in there. Similarly, Google Cloud Platform has some services in which you just have to go and write your own application or your own code. You don't have to worry about any of the other infrastructure requirements, or even hardware patches, operating system patches, and everything. You don't have to worry about anything. You just need to go and write your own code. I'm going to show all of these with some examples, but for now, just remember these terms because I'm going to use them again in the subsequent slides. What are some of the Google Cloud services? Since I've explained some of the terms, these are some of the particular Google Cloud services which scale from highly customizable to highly managed. Think about infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service here. The highly customizable ones fall more into the infrastructure as a service bracket. It's like a completely unfurnished house where everything you get to maintain on your own. Next, we have highly managed, that is more towards the software as a service. This is like a fully furnished house. You have everything given to you. You just need to go set up your stuff, maybe your open your bags, your utensils and everything, and you can start living there. You don't have to worry about buying new sofa, bed, or anything else. So this is how you can just put them on the particular scale. Compute engine, Kubernetes engine, Cloud Run, App Engine, Cloud Functions, and Firebase are some of the Google Cloud services where you can run your applications. You can create your application or your particular code in any of these services, where compute engine is highly customizable, as in you can customize it the way you want to. It is completely up to you. It's an open ground. But Firebase or even Cloud Functions for that matter, they're highly managed, as in you don't need to worry about anything other than going and writing your own code. And that also is extremely intuitive and simple. And it is highly managed by Google Cloud, as in some of the infrastructure needs, the operating system, everything is managed by Google Cloud. So depending upon your requirement, as in if you're a big company and you have a big application, you can choose Kubernetes or Compute Engine, which you have a team, an administrative team sitting, they can manage that. But if you're just a developer and you don't want to waste a lot of time on choosing the region, the zone, and many other operating systems and everything, you can go for highly managed services where you just create a function, for example, in Cloud Functions, and you can do whatever you want to. So these are some of the Google Cloud services which you can explore more and more once you go into the console. I'll give you a bit of a preview for the Google Cloud services since we're talking about that right now. So let's go back to this Google Cloud platform. You remember I had told you about the navigation menu, that is the 3 bars on the left-hand side. If you go into that, you can find an option called Compute. What is Compute? Compute are all the offerings provided by Google Cloud where you can run your applications. So remember all of these: App Engine, Compute Engine, Kubernetes, Cloud Functions, Cloud Run. I had mentioned all of this right now in the slide before this one. These are all the compute options. On the left-hand side, I had told you about Compute Engine, which is Google's infrastructure as a service offering, and it is highly customizable. I'm going to show you just an example of what I'm saying right now. What do I mean by highly customizable? So while I am opening an instance, so as you see, it is so simple. You just need to go into the navigation menu, click on Compute Engine, and you can create an instance. So by creating an instance, I'm creating a virtual machine here where I'm going to run my applications. I won't be creating it actually because it's going to burn a hole in my pocket, but I'm going to show you what do I mean by highly customizable. So name, of course, you can choose any name. So I'll just call it GCP for now. And you can choose a region. Remember I told you about regions and zones a while ago? So in this, you can choose, for example, US Central, you can choose Europe, and let me just choose Asia South. So as you can see, Asia South is Mumbai. In this, you can have different zones as a sub-region within Mumbai. So you can choose, for example, South 1B. Next, you see, you have the machine configuration that you can choose, which is highly customizable. You can choose the series, the machine type, you can use the compute optimized option, you can use memory optimization as well. You can use the CPU platform and also specify the GPUs in case you need it. And also once you go down, you can choose the boot disk, you have identity services, you can allow different kind of traffics. And as you see, it is highly customizable. You can choose everything from scratch. You are responsible for choosing not only the region and the zone, but also the machine configuration and everything else, the boot disk, identity, and also. Because this is so highly customizable, some of the bigger companies use this to run their applications. They can customize it based on the kind of applications they have, based on the kind of data they have, and based on the customers. So this is Google's infrastructure as a service offering. Like I mentioned, this is like an unfurnished house where you can do anything you want to. You can just write an application for yourself. Next, let me move on to another example. And move on to compute options, as I had mentioned a while ago, and we'll move on to App Engine. What is App Engine? App Engine is Google's platform as a service offering. Remember, platform as a service, that is somewhere in between infrastructure and software. So in this, you can create an application for yourself. Let's see how this is different from Compute Engine. I'm going to just click an application, and as you can see here, you don't have so many options as compared to Compute Engine. You cannot choose the machine you want, the machine configuration. You cannot choose the zone. You can just choose a region. So, for example, you decide, okay, let me just choose Asia South. You just choose that, and everything else is customized by Google Cloud. And you have to just create the application. As you can see, this is so highly managed by Google Cloud itself. You don't have to worry about anything. They are going to choose the right GPU, the right memory, everything else operating system based on your requirements. Good thing for this is hands-off approach. You have a semi-furnished house. You don't need to worry about buying the light and fan. But some companies who want a little more control, they choose Compute Engine. Because they have a lot of applications running, for example, or they have a specialized use in which they want more management. In this, if it's just an application that you want to create and run, for example, you want to create a web app, or you just want to create an application that you want to download from Google Store, this is the right choice for you. Next, finally, let me go on to the compute options, and let me choose Cloud Functions. Remember, I had mentioned Cloud Functions. This is Google's software as a service offering. What is software as a service offering? It's like a fully furnished house. You just need to go and write your application. I'll give you an example. You just click on create function out here. And as you can see, you need to choose the function name, and you have to choose the region, and not even the zone, just the region. And everything else, I mean, you just need to set a rule. For example, what's the trigger? So you can just set a condition. By trigger, I mean a condition. So for example, you have a web application, or you have a video game, for example. And in that, you want to set a condition. Once your user moves on to level 4, give him extra stars. That is a trigger. So basically, you have to just set the condition here, and everything else is done for you by Google Cloud. It's a completely hands-off approach. You just need to specify the trigger and the name, and everything else is taken care of you by Google Cloud. So whether it is scaling up and down, like if you have 10 customers one day and they love your application so much, they go and talk to all of their friends. Suddenly you have an entire college joining your application. So you have 1,000 people all of a sudden. Google Cloud will take care of all the scaling options, as in they'll make sure that everyone has a good performance. So this is Cloud Function, which is Google's software as a service offering. I'll just move on. Now, you have a lot of applications on the cloud, right? You have a lot of data, you have a lot of applications, and there's a lot going on out there in your Google Cloud platform. What is very important is to make sure that all your applications are secure. What do I mean by cloud security? Cloud security is basically technologies, processes, policies, and controls to make sure you have all your data secure. This is extremely important because just having good performance is not important for the users. For example, you are using a video game, and even though you have a great performance, there's no lag, it's never buffering, it's excellent, you can go on to the next level, everything is good. But you suddenly find out that the credit card that you used, that data has been compromised, and someone else is using your credit card to make purchases. Will you go back to that game again? I'm pretty sure no, you'll think twice before it, because even though you have a great performance, but if your personal details are not secure, you don't want to trust that particular application or the particular game again. You might as well go for another game which is slightly slower. So this is why cloud security is very important, because this is prime for having your customers or your clients' trust intact. So so cloud security is not just a product that you use to make sure your application is secure, but it's an entire framework. What do I mean by framework? Framework is basically a collection of all of these technologies, processes, policies, and controls to make sure you have a very strong foundation. It is like a house. If you don't have a strong foundation for a particular apartment, no matter how many stories you keep building on top of each other, the house will collapse. That is how security works. You need to make sure you know the right technologies, that is the right offerings that Google Cloud has for security. You have the right processes, like you need to have a really good process laid out for everyone. You need to train your internal staff. You need to make sure you have different dual factor authentication, for example, as in you don't only need to enter your password, but you also receive an SMS whenever you try to log in. You need to make sure you have good policies in place, as in you are compliant with all the industry standards about PCI, that is your credit card information, or any other sensitive data that is there in the cloud, and the controls, as in you need to make sure that only the right people have access to your applications. When you have all of this together, it forms a good security model or a good security framework to make sure your data is secure on the cloud. So you don't only have to make sure that your customers or the external customers' data is safe, but also your internal employees, their data is also safe on the cloud. Because if anyone gains access to your particular password or username, for example, they can misuse it. So this is what cloud security is about. There are different models using which you can understand the kind of threats you have to your applications, how to take care of those threats. I'm not going to do a deep dive into that, but I'm just going to gloss over very quickly so you people know what cloud security is about. This is extremely important when you want to think about cloud or even when you want to move on to the cloud. So, cloud security is a shared responsibility. Think about this like the PG example or the hostel example, or even the one PHK example that I gave a while ago. Even if you have a lock on your door, you still need to make sure that you are responsible for your security. If someone is knocking on the door, you just don't open it to random strangers, right? That is how shared responsibility works. Even if Google Cloud has really good encryption and really good security features, you need to make sure that you are also responsible for some of your data or the people that you have inside and outside your organization, and make sure that security is shared between you and the cloud provider. It's a mutual understanding, because you cannot just leave it out to Google Cloud to protect all your data, right? You have to also have good monitoring and good practices, policies, processes, everything that I mentioned earlier in place to make sure that your data is secure. Now, remember I had talked about IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS a while ago. So infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. Depending upon which service you have chosen, there's a separate responsibility on you to ensure safety. Let me start with IaaS, for example, that is infrastructure as a service. Remember I had showed you compute engine a while ago, in which everything is so customizable. In that, people, data, applications, and operating system are all your responsibility. What do I mean by all of these terms? People are people inside and outside your organization. So making sure their data is secure, their passwords are encrypted, their personal information or even their data and everything is secure. That is what people are all about. So basically, people are individuals or resources inside and outside your organization. You are responsible for their safety. You have to make sure that their data is encrypted. You have to make sure that if some customer is putting their credit card information, you need to comply by the PCI guidelines or the guidelines that are set by the industry. And all the policies are in place to secure confidential data of people. Next, you have data. So data is basically all the data that you have at rest or in transit in your application. In transit, it means, for example, you're playing a video game and there's data moving on. So that is data in transit or active data. And what is data at rest? It's basically stored data. So if you have some data that is archived and stored, even that is very important because that can contain some private information. So you want to make sure that that data is also secure. It is your responsibility. Next, you have applications. So in infrastructure as a service, the application is, security for the application is completely your responsibility. You need to make sure your applications are secure and you have all the right tools and all the right products and monitoring also for that matter to make sure your application is completely secure. That is because you customize it the way you want to. If you remember, you had to specify the GPU, the CPU, everything is completely customizable by you. So you have to also make sure that your data, or your applications are completely secure. With a lot of freedom also comes a lot of responsibility. Next, you have the operating system. In infrastructure as a service, you can choose your own operating system. You can choose Linux, you can choose Windows, you can choose anything you want to. Even Red Hat has certain operating systems. So it's completely up to you to make sure that the operating system patches are happening regularly, or the security patches, and any kind of security responsibility associated with the operating system is your responsibility. So that is what operating system responsibility is all about. Let me move on to the next one, platform as a service. In this also, people, data, and applications are completely your responsibility. You need to make sure all of this is safe. However, the operating system, since it's provided to you by the cloud provider, they are going to be responsible for the security patches and all the other security responsibilities, scanning and all of only the operating system. That is completely the cloud provider's responsibility. However, that doesn't mean that you just close your eyes. You need to also make sure that you are in sync with them. You're actually talking to them about all of this. You need to stay on top of the security game to make sure your app, everything is secure on the cloud. Because ultimately, if something happens, Google is not going to lose customers. You are going to lose your customers. Next, you have software as a service, where people and data are your responsibility. Remember, people and data is always your responsibility. Think about this like a Google Drive. You have a Google Drive application, for example, or you have a file that you're uploading onto Google Drive. You only choose who has edit access and who has view access to the Google file, right? And at the same time, data as well. You are making sure that you are what kind of data you're putting inside inside the application. You just don't write your password open, even if you're storing it on Google Cloud. You encrypt it. You put some maybe special symbols, or you put stars, or anyway, you have to encrypt and you have to secure it. So people and data is always your responsibility, no matter which cloud service you choose. However, in software as a service, application and operating system security responsibility lies with the Google Cloud provider. You don't have to worry about all the application level security or the operating system patches, etc. It's like Google Drive, like what I just mentioned right now. You're not worried about the applications that is running within Google Drive. You're just worried about people and the data. Of the security responsibility. That's why Google Cloud has something called as the Google Cloud Risk Protection Program. In this, they are moving away from using the word shared responsibility and moving to a shared fate, which means that Google Cloud has partnered with various different organizations, whether they're law agencies or different compliance agencies, to give you a really good experience when it comes to your security requirements. There are a lot of white papers, there are a lot of different guidance that you receive to make sure data is secure. They have examples where you can have a really good security model designed. So Google Cloud is not just asking you to manage your security, but they're also helping you with your security needs and requirements. So they're going to give you best practices, they're going to handhold you and guide you in your security requirements. Now I'll just give you an example of the Google Cloud security. I'm just giving you a small preview because we have been talking so much about security right now. So this is what we call as a security command center. You can again find it in the navigation menu. If you move here, you'll find the security command center. So security command center is basically a one-stop shop for all your security requirements. On the left-hand side, you can see threat detection, Beyond Corp Enterprise, identity-aware proxy. So all these fancy terms are basically the security services that are provided to you by Google Cloud. You can, of course, learn more about it. I won't do a deep dive in the interest of time, but you have different services here using which you can make sure your data is secure. You have the scanner, which scans for vulnerabilities in your application. You have different cryptographic keys to make sure your data is encrypted. You have different identity-aware proxy, which means that you can monitor who all is coming into your application and trying to gain access to your application. In that, you can filter out people who don't need access to the application, and you can keep some of the threats away. And you have threat detection and Beyond Corp Enterprise, which makes sure your data is secure. And Web Security Scanner, for example, is extremely popular right now, in that you can make sure that it scans your applications and does the testing for you to make sure that your application is strong from within. So these are some of the Google Cloud security requirements. You can just play around if you have a Google Cloud account, or if you want, you can go on to Quick Labs. That is QWIKLABS, and play around with some of the quests or some of the lab exercises they have. If you will. So next, gaining skills. I've given you just the foundations of Google Cloud platform. I've given you a demonstration, but what if you want to learn more? I'm sure many of you would like to learn more. Coursera has really good specializations and professional certificates for Google Cloud. And these are taught by instructors from Google Cloud itself. So you know you're hearing it from the horse's mouth. as in you're hearing it from the people who have designed the who have designed Google Cloud. So there are different instructors, developer advocates from Google Cloud who are going to help you understand more and more. So you can either do a fundamentals, you can do a deep dive, you can gain a specialization, for example, or you can even gain a professional certificate. So in this, you don't only have courses, but you have a nice blend of courses and hands-on labs. As in, they'll give you access to quick labs, which I just mentioned a while ago, QWIKLABS, in which you can go and you can just play around with the console. You can play around with Google Cloud Platform. And in order to pass some of the specializations and the professional certificates, you need to submit your labs as well. So it is a good way for you to not only demonstrate your skills, but also gain a lot of experience theoretically as well as practically. A cloud guru, it was earlier called Linux Academy. I don't know if many of you have heard about that. But if you are, for example, planning to pursue certification, which I'll be talking about in a while, you can choose a cloud guru. In that, you have good certification preparation tools, you have fundamentals, deep dives, and everything, which are taught by instructors who are not a part of Google Cloud, but they're like me or someone else who are actually affiliated to Google Cloud in some way or the other, and they're extremely good. So many of the people want to go to a cloud guru for their certification preparations because they also have mock tests and exams which you can practice. So that is one thing. And Udemy is not something I have used, but people always tell me that is very cost effective. So if you don't have a lot of money to spend on, for example, Coursera or a cloud guru, Udemy has good fundamentals and deep dives. I'm not sure if they'll give you a lot of hands-on experience with the labs as compared to Coursera. But still, if you want to gain fundamental and deep dive knowledge, or if you even want to prepare for certifications, Udemy can be a good one. So depending upon your level of interest and engagement, you can perhaps start with some of the fundamental courses and then move on to some of the specializations and professional certificates. This will not only help you gain knowledge because you'll be able to do labs in theory, but will also demonstrate your expertise. If you have it on your resume, it is really, really good. Because right now, Google, there are not a lot of people who are Google Cloud certified or who have some of the specializations and professional certificates. So if you have it, you're going to stand out in the market. And since Google Cloud is growing so exponentially, many of the companies actually hire if you have some of these specializations. And also, it's good for you to learn more and more about it so you can contribute it and you can keep growing on it. So these are some of the avenues using which you can gain skills. And yeah. And sorry, I have been talking about security, right? So there's some of the security best practices that you can follow to make sure your applications are secure. So establishing and managing firewalls, understanding security threats, identity and access management control. What is identity and access management control? It means basically you're giving least privilege to people who need to view or look into your applications. Like you have an application on Google Drive, you just don't give everyone an editor access, right? You give people who just want to view the application viewer access. Next, we have active monitoring. Keep monitoring your applications to make sure that there is no malicious activity or some of the hackers are lurking around. It is like the CCTV camera in front of an office. So that is what active monitoring is about. Understand and your cloud locations and services. So you need to know what kind of service you have, whether it's an infrastructure as a service, software as a service, or platform as a service, and think about your security model accordingly. So understand the shared security model and thorough vulnerability and penetration testing. Use some of the tools that are provided by Google Cloud or have a security team or a testing team to test your applications from within. Manage and institute guidelines, as in you need to have a good process around security, which is followed not only by people inside, but also outside your organization. Train your staff. So when you have people inside your organization, train them on some of the security best practices. So there's no lapse in their security judgment. And finally, keep your data encrypted. So need to make sure, can you please mute whoever that was? Yeah. And please keep your data encrypted. So that means you have to store your data in a format that is not easily understandable by anyone else to make sure that even if someone gains access to the data, they don't understand what is written. Next, I'll move on to the Google Cloud certifications preview. So I've talked a little bit about some of the courses that you can do on Coursera, a Cloud Guru, or even Udemy. But what are certifications? Certifications are basically exams which you give for Google Cloud, and on passing the exam, you will get certified or you will get acknowledged by Google Cloud that you have good knowledge about that particular certification. So out here we have three levels: foundational, associate, and professional. I'll just zoom into this a little bit. Yeah, foundational, associate, and professional. So foundational is basically if you don't have any hands-on with Google Cloud, but at the same time you have knowledge, like you have a practical and you have a little bit about theory, you know, a good theoretical knowledge about Google Cloud, you can give the digital leader certification. It is right now in beta, that is, it is a brand new certification. Last week only I think it was released, but it is still in a trial phase. But this is for people who don't have a lot of hands-on coding experience, who don't have experience with Google Cloud platform, as in you have not worked on it, but you know it really well, as in you have taken a lot of good courses and you understand all the products, services, everything else that Google Cloud provides. So that is the foundational level. Next, we have the associate level. Associate is basically for people who don't have a lot of experience, but at least they have 6 months, more than 6 months experience building on Google Cloud. That is, they have done quick labs or they have done Coursera courses, and they have actually played around with the Google Cloud platform a little bit. So this is the Associate Cloud Engineer certification. A Cloud Engineer certification basically certifies that you know all the Google Cloud products. You can, for example, deploy certain applications. You know how to make the right choice for your particular use case. So this doesn't require a lot of experience, but at the same time, it is recommended that you are at least familiar with the Google Cloud platform, because the questions will definitely be based on that only. So having just a theoretical knowledge is not enough. You need to have a little bit of experience as well. Next, you have the professional. I'm not sure this is applicable to a lot of you, because at this stage in your life, you wouldn't be having more than 3 years of experience, but this is good to know once you start doing your day job. So professional certifications, you have the cloud architect, cloud developer, data engineer, cloud DevOps engineer, security engineer, network engineer, collaboration engineer, and machine learning engineer. So based upon the use case, for example, you want to go into architecture, you want to become a cloud architect, this would be a really good certification for you right now. It is industry recognized, and many companies actually want you to have the certification, because Google is certifying, or it is telling you that, hey, you are capable or you're well enough and you understand Google Cloud well enough to pass this particular exam. All of these exams are multi-choice, as in you have different choices. Some of it can be 1 or 2 choices, correct answers for each question. They can range from 2 to 3 hours depending upon the kind of certification you have chosen. And they have different questions which are based on circumstances or based on case studies or just simple choices that you need to make. So the more experience you have, the easier it is for you to answer these questions, because they're also based on circumstances and case studies. So what is the right choice? Sometimes all 4 can seem right, but you need to make the choice that complies by some of the best practices that Google Cloud has. So no matter what your interest is, for example, you want to go into security, cloud security engineer can be a good certification. You want to become a cloud architect or developer, data engineer, DevOps. What is DevOps? DevOps is basically development and operations together. So if you want to make sure there's a good seamless process happening when something is getting developed, that is the developer operations or DevOps. Next, you have network engineer. If you're hardcore into networks, VPNs, services, routes, and everything. So if you're hardcore into network or you're from networks and telecommunication background, cloud network engineer can be great, or machine learning. That is artificial intelligence or machine learning. If you feel you're well versed with that, that can also be a good certification. So if you have the bandwidth and if you have a lot of enthusiasm, you can always play around with the Google Cloud platform. You can take the courses, you can go into quick labs. Since I'm mentioning quick labs again and again, I'll just open this for you. This is how quick labs looks like. I'll just enlarge this for you. So basically in this, you can look at a quest. So what is a quest? Quest is basically a situation that is given to you. It's like an exam. You just need to click on that and you have to basically finish it. So if you click on this particular quest, for example, and you enroll in the quest, you will earn a badge. That is, Google is going to certify that, hey, you are able to complete this particular lab or this particular activity. So you are well versed with that. So depending upon the amount of quest you complete and depending upon the amount of badges you earn while completing the quest, You can also be very well recognized by Google, as in they're going to give you badges, and this is something you can demonstrate on your either resume or on your LinkedIn profile for that matter. And this is also going to give you really good hands-on experience, because you can go into the Google Cloud Console and you can do whatever you want to out there. So this is something you can always explore if you want to play around with Google Cloud. And this is you just need some credits for this, and you won't be billed very heavily as compared to Google Cloud Platform. As in, if you just go into directly into Google Cloud Platform and you run a virtual machine, you will be billed heavily for it. So definitely try this Google Quick Labs. You can go to Coursera. I'll just show you how to go to Coursera. And I'm so sorry, Coursera. So if you go on to Coursera, I will zoom this in for you. You can choose what you want to learn, right? And in that, you can, for example, choose Google Cloud Platform. Once you click on Google Cloud Platform, you can see there are so many professional certificates. There's a specialization. There's a particular course if you just want to do fundamentals. And all of this are taught by Google Cloud Training. So these are trainers who are inside Google Cloud. So you can choose, so they have all the insights. It's completely kept up to date, and you need to basically do some of the, so if you see this course has different, you can look at the syllabus, you can see, okay, 1, 2, 3 weeks, for example, there are different modules that you need to complete. And you don't only have to do a video, but you also have to complete practice exercise, you have to give exams, you also have to complete labs. So this will give you a really good overview and really good experience when it comes to Google Cloud. So definitely do explore this, whether it is Coursera, any one of your choice, and you can always search for Google Cloud Platform, and you can go in and get these certifications or specializations. It's completely up to you. And if you need any help or guidance, I'm always available for you all. And thank you so much. You have been a really good audience, and thanks for tuning into my session. You can contact me on my website, clouddemystified.com. You can contact me on LinkedIn, search Vijay Pai, or this is the link if you want to go directly. Twitter, I'm not very active, but definitely if you want, you can reach out to me there as well. So feel free to reach out if you need anything, if you need any guidance on the certifications you want to do, on the courses you want to do, you need any clarifications, feel free to reach out. And Sejal, I'll let you take it from here. And if there are any questions, please put them in the chat box or whichever medium you're using right now. So thank you so much.
Hello. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
Ma'am, I have a couple of doubts. You said कि cloud computing doesn't have any physical data centers or something like that. So, but if I talk about Azure only, so Azure provides us the physical data centers and all that. So, does Google Cloud doesn't provide that, or any cloud provider doesn't provide that?
So what I said here is, without physical data center, it is not possible to have your data and applications. But what cloud providers do is they are going to maintain that for you. So for example, you mentioned Azure here. I'm not very well versed with Azure, but even if they give you a physical data center, you don't need to have a team that is going to maintain all the machines inside the data center, right? I mean, you don't have anyone who is going to maintain the physical data center. So Google Cloud also, they let you choose the region and the zone, which I just mentioned. So you can choose the data center that is closest to your target audience, but you don't really have to worry about maintaining that data center. For example, maintaining the electricity, paying for the water, paying for all the different requirements, all that is taken care of by Google Cloud. Or even like in your example, even Azure, like you don't need to have a dedicated team, or you don't have to go into the physical data center to maintain all the racks and all the services, because that's a really big headache when you have to maintain all the physical hardware for the particular data center. So even if you're given a data center, it is all in a virtual environment. They won't ask you to go into the data center and do all the maintenance activities. So that way you can have a hands-off approach. You can just run your applications, and all the headache associated with the data center is going to be taken care of by Google Cloud. So I hope that clears your doubt.
Yeah, ma'am, exactly. That's what I was saying, because I heard that you said it doesn't have any data centers and all that. That's why that strikes my mind. And ma'am, the second thing is if I talk about some reasons and all that. So I am not familiar with Google Cloud right now. So Google Cloud I am familiar with 2 or 3 months only. But if I talk
Mhm.
about AWS, so in AWS, if I specifically talk about Amazon Lex, so Amazon Lex, this facility is not available in the Mumbai region, but in many other regions. So is it the case with Google Cloud also that some services are not available in Mumbai region and all other regions?
Not particularly. So they are made available. So if you look at all the services, since it's completely virtual and online, you have all these services available. But of course, I mean, if they don't have a physical data center or something in a particular region, the performance might be a little slower, but it's not something you are going to realize. So it's going to be microseconds or something you won't even realize. But all these services, like if you go into the artificial intelligence, I think my screen sharing has stopped. Just give me a minute. I'll just show you what I'm talking about. Sorry about that. Yeah. So if you go into this particular Google Cloud navigation bar and you go scroll down into artificial intelligence, since you talked about Lex, there are different AI platforms and everything that you can use, and all of this is made available to you. So of course you can play around with that, and whenever you have a particular platform, or for example, even if you don't know coding, you can always use something like Dialogflow, in which you don't really have to worry a lot about coding. So there's some low code and no code chatbots also that you can build. So to your question, I don't see any kind of restrictions that I'm aware of, but yes, performance might be little up and down based upon the requirements and the availability, but nothing that you cannot explore. So I'm not aware about I mean Amazon Lex or AWS, but at least with Google Cloud Platform, no such restrictions as such.
Okay, okay. And ma'am, one more doubt was there. Like, if I talk about the security in the cloud computing, so if I just want to answer that yes or no, so is cloud 100% secure?
I'm sorry, can you just repeat that?
Is cloud computing 100% secure?
Nothing is 100% secure. Even while I'm sitting here, I'm not sure if this house is 100% secure. So it's not 100% secure. That is why you need to build a security model which provides for maximum security. And it's always not possible to build a completely seamless security model. Sometimes attacks will happen, but you need to have a good foundation to not only anticipate the attacks that are coming, anticipate all the security breaches that you might have, but you also need to have a good model to mitigate them in case in case some security breach happens. Encryption is a good way to do that. So even if somehow someone gets inside and sees the data, it is completely encrypted. It is stored in a format that they cannot understand. So that is why security is not only about preventing attacks, but also if something happens, there should be a good, a good reactive approach to make sure that those attacks are mitigated, as in they are not going to cause a lot of harm to you. So you need to be proactive as well as reactive, both when it comes to security. Nothing is 100% secure, not even your physical data centers are not. At Akamai Technologies, I used to work with the networks team, and they had physical data centers. One day we realized that somehow someone actually picked up a particular rack and stole it from the data center. So even that funny things like those have also happened. So nothing is 100% secure, but you need to know what to do. So if you're prepared, it's always better. So you can mitigate or lessen the impact of that security breach on your software or your application. I hope that answers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Cloud provides two types of security, like security when data is at rest and security when data is at transit. So
Yes,
if I talk about the data is at rest, so that thing I think it manages by IAM roles and all that. And when it comes to transit, and at that time they goes with encryptors and decryptors, all that. So
exactly.
if I talk about the WhatsApp and all that, WhatsApp and Facebook, they also provide the end-to-end encrypted data. But in today's era, breaches are just at its peak. So, is it correct to say that if I rely on cloud, then my data would be more secure as compared to all other apps? And if yes, then how?
That's a very generalized statement, difficult for me to say. But one good thing about cloud is whether it is more secure or not, but you have a lot of tools here to make sure that it is more secure. Like, for example, since we are on the security page itself, you have threat detection. In that, you can see, you can detect the threats, or you can anticipate the ones coming in. So, Google for Cloud, for example, has a lot of experience with data. So, based on the experience that they have, they're able to run analytics to detect threats. Next, you have the identity aware proxy. So in that, it goes a level beyond IAM. So in that, they also see whether all the people who are accessing the applications, should they have access or not. So you can monitor it even more closely if it is sensitive applications. And you have different cryptographic keys. You have the secret manager. The secret manager is basically a service that is provided to you in which you can manage all the secrets or all the sensitive data that comes in. And also you talked about encryption here. So you can have different kind of encryptions also. Some of them are customer supplied keys and some of them are customer managed keys. So in customer managed keys, you go a level beyond the regular encryption, and you make sure that you can manage the security key rotation and all the other encryption that is provided to you. Customer supplied keys would be completely, I mean, you are in charge of all the keys. So what I mean to say here is, even though cloud is really secure because there's one layer of authentication or one layer of security that is provided by the cloud provider, but at the same time you also have a lot of support system to make sure that you can have a better security model. And Google Cloud has also partnered with various different organizations across the globe, whether they're law agencies or other different companies like Forseti or Config Manager, to make sure that you can have a good security model. So if you're passionate about security, if you want to make sure you want to give a good experience to your customers, cloud has a better support system than a physical data center. You know who to go to. There's a good team in Google that is working towards this. You can contact them if you want. And at the same time, you have good products, services, and processes to make sure your data is secure. And I talked about the risk protection program, right? In that, basically, you have partnerships with different agencies who are going to make sure that you have a good security model. Because security is not just a switch on and off thing. It is a complete model that you need to build from scratch. So when you have a physical data center and you're not on cloud, security might be an isolated occurrence, like you don't have a good support system. But on cloud, not only do you have one layer of encryption and one layer of security that is provided by the cloud provider, but also you have a lot of support system and resources to make sure your application is secure. So that's a really good question, by the way. Thanks for asking.
Thank you, ma'am. And ma'am, one more thing, like if I say not now, but after 5 to 10 years, if I say will the Kubernetes replace the cloud and all that, is there any chance?
I'm sorry, your voice is breaking a little bit. Can you talk a little slowly?
Ma'am, I'm talking about not now, but after 5 to 10 years, Kubernetes can replace the cloud or not?
That's a good question. So Kubernetes has a very specific use case. Of course, it is open source and it is made available everywhere, and a lot of foundations is built on Kubernetes. But like I showed you in this particular example, I'm sorry, I haven't showed you Kubernetes. So for people who don't know about Kubernetes, I'll just show an example of what he's talking about. So Kubernetes engine here is basically a space where you can run your applications, and you can bracket them into different containers. It's like a ship. So for example, you're shifting from one place to another. You can either put all your different items of the house onto a ship, or you can package them together and put them in a container and move them from one place to another, which is much more secure, much more compact, much more cost effective. So yes, Kubernetes, if you want to run, back to your question, it's very difficult to say that because Kubernetes is very specific for the use case. Even though it has security features and different customizations, but there's some people, for example, who want a very hands-off approach. You're just a developer, you want to go and write a code. So Kubernetes requires a little more knowledge and customization as compared to some of the software as a service offerings. Cloud has a lot of offerings apart from just infrastructure platform as a service, for example. So it's difficult to say that it's going to replace, and I don't think that's going to happen, because artificial intelligence, for example, there's a different kind of platform that you need to run that. Storage is very different. Like you can, for Google Cloud Platform, there are different storage services that you use. So although Kubernetes is growing, it's going to become very essential for any cloud provider, and it is growing daily. So of course, I mean, it's going to scale a lot more in the next 5-10 years, for example, but it's never going to replace the cloud, because cloud has a lot more features other than just compute. There's artificial intelligence, there's security, there's storage, there's a lot more, just and of course it's growing and growing now. So that is what I have to say.
Okay, and ma'am, if I talk about again security of the cloud, so cloud security is currently based on only two things. That is, one is encryption and the other one is IAM. Is there any other feature on which the cloud security is based on?
there's a lot more. So it's just not about IAM and encryption. Firewall rules, for example. What is firewall rules? So it is when, for people who don't know about firewalls, when traffic is, you have to, when you monitor the traffic that goes out and the monitor the traffic that comes in. It is like getting a parcel in your house, for example. You can either open the door to your the courier person and take the parcel, which is not very, very dangerous, or you can just open the window and make sure that just your the parcel is coming in but nothing is going out. So basically, firewall rules, having good firewall rules is also a particular, a very important aspect to security. And security also has monitoring, something you completely missed. So whether you keep your data encrypted or not, or whether you have all the other features like IAM roles and all, you need to have active monitoring too. It's like the CCTV camera in front of a shop, for example. You need to make sure, is some malicious activity happening? Is something not looking fine? So that is what monitoring is about. And also, you need to have a proactive approach. For example, audit logs is provided by Google Cloud Platform. What does audit logs do? It gives you a paper trail of everything that has been happening. So in case there's an attack that has happened even after you have a very good security model, that can give you a paper trail, as in you can trace back, okay, what was happening, and you can go over all the audit logs. It's Google Cloud provides a really good analysis of everything that is happening. So that also is a good security feature that is provided by Google Cloud. So like I said, it's not only about encryption and IAM, because that is really good for protecting the data. But at the same time, you need to know what to do in case a breach happens. In case a DDoS attack happens, for example, the entire website goes down, what do you do then? So having a good foundation for that and using all the features that are available for that. And one important thing that you miss right now is testing. So you need to make sure that your application is getting tested from within. So there's good vulnerability and penetration testing. For people who don't know what is penetration testing, it's basically when you attack your structure from the inside to make sure that if there's anything loose, if there's a loose brick in the house, for example, you can, when you try to break it, you see, okay, this brick is loose, let me fix it. So no one from outside can gain access, or no one from outside can attack the structure and get inside. So penetration testing is basically trying to attack the structure from within, and vulnerability testing is making sure that there are no vulnerabilities that you can detect from inside your system. So that is also extremely important. Testing, encryption, monitoring, debugging in case monitoring happens, having a good audit trail. As in, if something happens, you should know what to do. Backups, one thing you missed here, backup. So even if something happens, you need to make sure that there's data backup, and that data is backed in storage with good security features. Like, you don't want any of the data to get compromised. Encryption is extremely important, of course, and IAM roles, like you mentioned. IAM roles basically is called, it's identity access management that I just mentioned a while ago, for those of you who don't know. So basically, you have to give different kind of privileges to people inside and outside the organization. So yes, so there are a lot of features when it comes to cloud security, a lot of things you need to take into consideration.
Ma'am,
I hope that answers.
ma'am, good evening.
Good evening.
Ma'am, I have doubt, ma'am. How does Google use encryption to protect our data? Means
I'm
how,
sorry, what
which
did you say?
mechanism they work? How does Google use? That means which algorithm used?
Which algorithms? So that is a secret sauce which Google is not going to give out to us. But they encrypt your data. One layer of your data is encrypted in transit and at rest. So they have they encrypt it. So whatever goes into it by default, they encrypt it for you. But at the same time, you can use different kind of keys that is customer managed and customer supplied if that is not enough for you. So for that, you have services available on Google Cloud Platform in which you can choose your own keys, whether it is customer supplied or customer managed. But as far as the algorithm is concerned, that's not something that's made public to us. But at the same time, Google Cloud will make sure that your data is secure at transit or at rest. So one level of security is provided to you. The other level, if you want more security for sensitive data, you have the option of taking that into consideration.
Ma'am, my question is, ma'am, has Google Cloud ever been hacked?
Has Google Cloud ever been attacked?
Yes, ma'am,
Is that
by some hackers.
yes? Everything that you have on the internet has been
But
attacked.
ma'am, I
But
know
Google
in
Cloud,
March, ma'am, in March 2020, it was hacked.
yeah. So it has been hacked many times. Like some, I think, yeah, like you said, in last year, Google Cloud, YouTube, everything had gone down. So everything gets attacked. I cannot say anything is 100% secure. So just to give you a preview, while I was working at Akamai, every second there are millions of attacks happening. Like even while we're talking here on Google Meet, there are millions of attacks happening right now as we are talking. So Google Cloud, of course, a lot of those, majority of those, like 99% of these attacks are stopped at before even coming into contact. But some of them make through, like some of the DDoS attacks or SQL injections, they happen. But at the same time, they have a good way of just getting it back up. So like I mentioned just a while ago, nothing is 100% secure, but you should know what to do in case something happens. It's like a house. You're living in a house. Thieves will try to come in, but you should know how to have a good security mechanism to make sure you're secure. So yes, the answer is yes. Everything has, Google Cloud has been attacked, and it is probably getting attacked right now as well as we are talking. So
Ma'am, what is difference between Kubernetes and Docker?
that is actually a little beyond right now because we are actually running out of time. But those are two different services that
Ma'am,
you use. So why don't you just connect with me on LinkedIn for that? I'll just explain this a little bit more in detail because I want to, yeah, answer some questions very particular to Google Cloud and fundamentals. You can just connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll help you with that question.
ma'am,
Yes, ma'am, I'm connected.
ma'am, Google Cloud or ma'am Microsoft OneDrive, ma'am, which is better?
Both are good. It's difficult for me to say that, but because I'm a Google, I have more experience with Google Cloud and Google Drive. I'm particularly comfortable with that, but they have different use cases. Like in OneDrive, you also have different functionalities like Word, documents, and everything. So you have, if you're a very heavy PowerPoint user or very heavy Microsoft Word user, that can be a good avenue because you can write your applications on the cloud. But if you're more comfortable with Google Sheets and Google Docs, that is good for Google Drive. So very difficult for me to answer because that particularly depends upon your use case, and I don't even think I have the authority to answer to that question. But it completely depends upon your use case. If you're comfortable with Excel, PowerPoint, Microsoft Word, that's something you're using since a long time. That's Microsoft OneDrive is good. But at the same time,
Ma'am,
if you're more comfortable with Google Sheets, Google Drive is good. Yes, please. Next question.
ma'am, Microsoft OneDrive is written in the C# language, na? Because it is operating in Microsoft
Mm-hmm.
PC.
Right.
So, ma'am, in what language it was written in OneDrive?
I don't have the answer to that actually, and I think that's beyond the scope of Google Cloud platform. Are you asking in what language is Google Drive written?
No, ma'am, OneDrive, ma'am, Microsoft OneDrive.
I'm not very familiar with the programming or the language that goes beyond OneDrive, and I think this is slightly outside the scope of this particular discussion or the particular session out here. So, if you want, just connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll try finding an answer to that and getting back to you. But if there are any questions if people have with relation to Google Cloud Platform in particular, I'll be happy to answer that right now.
Ma'am,
Mhm.
is there any way so that students could start with Google Cloud without worrying about cost?
Is there any resource that you can do? Do you people have Coursera subscription from your
Not
particular?
course, the actual Google Cloud subscription.
Oh, Google Cloud subscription. So Quick Labs actually gives you some of the, I mean, you can actually access some of this. But at the same time, I think Google Cloud had, I'm not sure if they have this now or not, but they used to give you credits like $200 where you can use that credit and you can use Google Cloud without worrying about the cost. I'll just see if that is still open right now. But other than that, there's some services which do not require, which do not incur a cost. Like for example, right now I've been using, but my estimated billing is just $0. So if you don't just run a VM or just leave it running for that matter, you can you can do that. So I'll have to see because when I was using Google Cloud, used to provide us with $200 credit, which you could use towards the cloud platform. So I'll just look into that if that is still available. And if you can just connect with me on LinkedIn or something, I can send you the links if needed.
And ma'am, what would be more cheaper? I mean, running a virtual machine or using serverless architecture?
I'm sorry, using a virtual machine or?
Or serverless architecture? which is more
Serverless is
cost
much
effective?
cheaper. Yeah, serverless is definitely much more cost effective because in virtual machine you have billed by the second or billed by a particular time period. But when it comes to serverless architecture, you're only billed for what you use. So if there are people who are accessing data on your applications or something, you're billed for that. So definitely when it comes to cost effective method, if you don't have a lot of clarity into what is going into there, serverless is good because you're only paying for what you use or you're only paying while the application is running. So if that is it, you all can also connect with me, like I said, on LinkedIn. If you have any questions outside the scope of this particular session, I'm happy to answer, or even something pertaining to this. I'll get back to you. I'll just mail Sejal with some of the resources that you can use. And for example, if you can use Google Cloud without incurring a heavy cost or something like that, I can just mail Sejal, and Sejal, you can just forward it all to the people within your college. So I can help you with some of those resources as well. I'll share this presentation in case you need. And yeah, if you have anything, feel free to connect with me.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
sure, ma'am. I'll share the resources with everyone here. And
Mhm.
thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for such an informative session. And I really hope that it has helped out everyone in the event today. And in case you guys have still more doubts to ask, please connect with ma'am personally over LinkedIn. And I'm sure she'd be happy to help you all. And thank you for joining us. And yeah, you can all leave now.
Hi, sir.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
ma'am. I just have one more doubt, one last doubt.
Yeah, ma'am.
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah, excuse me, ma'am. I was saying, कि suppose I have hosted a website and I have connected it with load balancers and it is, I have enabled the auto scaling too. So,
Mhm.
is there any chance कि my website get crashed or something like that? Suppose right now, currently, I am getting 100 requests per minute, and suddenly the request increases to 1,000 or lakh requests per minute.
Mhm.
So, if I have enabled the load balancing and auto scaling, so is there any chance that my website got crashed or hacked, something like that?
Very less chance that is going to crash based on load because you have enabled both of these, which is really good. But at the same time, it can get crashed if there's some other kind of attack that is happening, like if there's a high DDoS. So when it comes to DDoS attacks, that is denial of service. There are too many bots that are running. So sometimes it is about the kind of scale that Google Cloud can do. So that's why having security features is extremely important. So there are some different circumstances which is not, something we can predict right now. It may crash, but when it comes to just general load, as in if there's no malicious activity happening, it's with just genuine users, no, I don't think it will crash.
Okay, so if I talk about the CBSE website during the result time, like 10th or 12th result, so at that time the website got stuck somewhere or something happened like that. So is there, are they not using the load balancers or what exactly happens at that time? So website's not working.
I don't know what they use basically. So, are they using a cloud provider? Are they using an on premise infrastructure? I'm not sure how they're managing their load. But if they're using a load balancer properly, because load balancers are also really expensive. So, some of these government organizations, it's difficult for them to even afford some of this. So, no matter how cheap it is, or maybe they don't have the expertise to deal with it. Because having load balancers requires a lot of network knowledge. So, you do know L4, L7, what kind of load balancer to use, everything comes into play. So maybe yes, they're not using load balancers, they're not using all the features that are provided with it, or it can be as simple as maybe they're not running on cloud. I don't know where they're running. So if it's a physical data center, scaling up and down or managing the load is always a really big headache. So I don't know what is happening because there can be various things that are happening out there. Maybe the website is not optimized for use when it comes to a lot of people. They don't know how to manage the load. Maybe they're not running on cloud. And even if they're running on cloud, maybe they don't have the money or the resources to use load balancer. Because the more hands-off service that you use on the cloud, it also becomes a little more expensive. So if they don't want to spend on cloud, or maybe they don't know what all features is being provided. So it completely depends upon the situation. And sometimes it's also something as simple as internet fluctuation. So no matter if you have a great cloud service or everything else is right in place, but the internet service is not working, there's network disruption that can also cause slow loading or even crashing of the website. So there can be many things that are happening out there.
तो मैम बहुत सारी प्रॉब्लम्स है मैम क्लाउड के साथ।
I'm sorry.
इंटरनेट प्रॉब्लम भी है मैम, बहुत ज्यादा। इंडिया में तो बहुत ज्यादा है इंटरनेट प्रॉब्लम मैम। क्लाउड सर्विस
हम्म।
क्या इंटरनेट काम नहीं करेगी?
सो अगर आप इंटरनेट ही नहीं चल रहा है तो क्लाउड तो काम ही नहीं कर सकता ना, तो कुछ भी नहीं काम कर सकता। तो क्लाउड ऑफ कोर्स मतलब आपका जर्नी स्मूथर कर सकता है, बट अगर आपका जैसा क्लाउड प्रोवाइडर वगैरह सॉरी आपका इंटरनेट नहीं चल रहा है, बफरिंग हो रहा है बहुत ज़्यादा, सो नो मैटर विच क्लाउड प्रोवाइडर यू यूज, प्रॉब्लम आएगा, लैग्स आएगा। बट डेफिनेटली इफ यू हैव अ स्टेबल इंटरनेट कनेक्शन एंड एवरीथिंग एल्स आपका अच्छा चल रहा है, तो क्लाउड प्रोवाइडर इज अ रियली गुड ऑप्शन। बिकॉज एक तो आपको हेडेक कम है, फिजिकल डेटा सेंटर है उसका, और मेनी ऑफ द सर्विसेज प्रोडक्ट्स एंड फीचर्स आपको क्लाउड प्रोवाइडर ही दे रहा है, तो आपको इधर उधर भागने की जरूरत नहीं है टू मेक श्योर दैट यू हैव ऑल द सर्विसेज। सो
मैम हम एक स्टूडेंट है फिलहाल, तो हमारे क्लाउड किस तरीके से काम आ सकता है?
मैंने जैसा भी जैसे मेंशन किया, फॉर एग्जांपल अगर आपको गूगल ड्राइव यूज करना है, अगर आपका एक वेबसाइट है, आपको एक वेबसाइट बनाना है, वो आपको होस्ट करना है, आप वो क्लाउड पे होस्ट कर सकते हो। तो मतलब उससे आपको क्या होगा, डीएनएस नेम एवरीथिंग आपको प्रोवाइडेड, क्लाउड ही प्रोवाइड करेगा, आपको उसका हेडेक नहीं लेना पड़ेगा। तो उसके लिए आप क्लाउड यूज कर सकते हो, आप गूगल ड्राइव में जाके अपना फाइल्स एप्लीकेशंस वगैरह भी स्टोर कर सकते हो। सो एज स्टूडेंट्स यू
बट
कैन
मैम
यूज
वो तो
दिस।
15 GB मैम फ्री मिलता है, वो सफिशिएंट हो जाता है उसमें।
हाँ, तो इफ इट डिपेंड्स अपॉन योर नीड ऑल्सो, लाइक कोई भी अगर आप क्लाउड प्रोवाइडर यूज करो, इवन गूगल क्लाउड फॉर दैट मैटर, सब कुछ थोड़ा समटाइम्स यू हैव टू पे अ लिटिल मोर, बट दैट इज बेटर। अगर आपको जैसे हार्डवेयर स्पेसिफिक अपने लैपटॉप के लिए भी खरीदना हो, वो भी तो एक्सपेंसिव रहता है। तो डिपेंडिंग अपॉन आपका कितना डेटा है, आप वो यूज कर सकते हो, और उससे ज्यादा है तो यू कैन ऑलवेज पे मोर एंड ऑन अ सब्सक्रिप्शन बेसिस। सो
मैम इसमें मैम डाटा लॉस होने की प्रॉब्लम नहीं होती कि जैसे कि कभी कभी सर्वर में प्रॉब्लम आ जाती है, डाटा एनक्रिप्ट हो जाता है या फिर डिलीट हो जाए?
नहीं, सो व्हाट गूगल क्लाउड प्रोवाइड्स इज नॉट ओनली जो भी डेटा आपका भी सपोज फॉर एग्जांपल स्टोरेज में है, देयर इज ऑलवेज बैकअप का बैकअप आल्सो, लाइक एंटार्क्टिका वगैरह में दे हैव बिग बिग डेटा सेंटर्स जहाँ पे सारा आर्काइव डेटा है। तो इवन अगर आपका डेटा फॉर एग्जांपल डिलीट हो गया, देयर इज ऑलवेज अ वे टू रिट्रीव इट डिपेंडिंग अपॉन द सेंसिटिविटी। तो डिपेंडिंग अपॉन द काइंड ऑफ स्टोरेज ऑप्शन आप यूज करोगे गूगल क्लाउड में, जैसे नियर लाइन स्टोरेज, कोल लाइन स्टोरेज, जो डिफरेंट स्टोरेज ऑप्शन है जो आपके पास है। तो अगर आपका कोल लाइन स्टोरेज है, तो आपका डेटा वो हो जाए मतलब समवेयर आर्काइव हो रहा है। सो परमानेंट डिलीशन इवन इफ इट हैपेंस इज ऑलवेज अ वे टू रिट्रीव द बैकअप, एंड डिपेंडिंग अपॉन आप कैसे कस्टमर हो गूगल क्लाउड के साथ, दे कैन ऑलवेज हेल्प यू रिट्रीव द डेटा।
तो मैम इजीली रिट्रीव हो जाता है मतलब, अगर हम चाहें तो?
हाँ, तो डिपेंडिंग अपॉन हाँ आपने कहाँ पे स्टोर किया है, व्हाट यू आर डूइंग, एंड गूगल क्लाउड का जितना कैपेबिलिटी है, आर्काइव होता है डेटा, सो इट इज रिट्रीवेबल। इट्स नॉट लाइक आपका वेबसाइट या फिजिकल डेटा सेंटर जहाँ पे गया तो गया, सो इफ यू डोंट हैव अ बैकअप।
Ma'am,
ओके, थैंक यू।
Yes.
ma'am, which cloud platform WhatsApp uses?
I don't know actually. So I think Facebook has their own private cloud. I don't think they actually rely on any of these public cloud providers, because while I was at Akamai, I know that Facebook had their own CDN, content delivery network system. So I'm not really sure about that because things keep changing at such a fast pace. But definitely, I know that they're not using any of these major competitors, because somewhere these they are all in the same sphere. But I think they use their own private cloud. But I didn't really need to make sure I have the correct information.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I think I'll leave now in the interest of time. And if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out. Thank you so much. And thanks a lot, Sejal and Ria, for inviting me to this session.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. And
Thanks.
I hope that everybody has cleared their doubts. And if not, you can personally speak to ma'am. And yeah, so you guys can leave now. And I hope you can join us for our further more events. Thank you, everyone.